Chester B., Little Rock, Arkansas. Looks like Bernie the commie is running for president again. Which country? Nicaragua? Just came across these two videos of him from the 1980s. In the first, he praises Castro and Ortega while bad-mouthing Reagan. The second, he and his wife praised the communist youth programs in the Soviet Union. Have a look, and I would love your thoughts. This is incredible stuff. I've seen this on my own. Bernie Sanders now says, look at Scandinavia. Look at Scandinavia. People are, oh, Scandinavia. Scandinavia is not a country. It's a collection of countries, by the way. They don't have a capital, you know. So you're looking at Scandinavia. Well, look at Scandinavia for what? Well, there democratic socialism works, don't you know? So now America is to aspire to be what? Denmark? What the hell's going on in Denmark? Why should we aspire to be Denmark? That's number one. Number two, there's all kinds of problems they're having in Scandinavia with their welfare state, with their massive taxation. All kinds of problems. But his followers and the media aren't going to take the time to go into these countries, right? To analyze these countries and see what's taking place. We're not Scandinavia. We're not any of the countries in Scandinavia. And notice, and I said this on radio last night, notice he doesn't point to democratic socialism that succeeds in the United States. How come he doesn't point to San Francisco? How come he doesn't point to New York City? How come he doesn't point to Chicago? How come he doesn't point to blue states that are going broke? California was the most prosperous state in the country. It had the 7th biggest economy in the world. Look what they've done to it. Look what they've done to New York and New Jersey and Illinois. People are leaving. They have fewer and fewer congressmen. Where are they going? For relief to red states, where they stupidly vote Democrat. They go to Texas. They go to Florida. They go to low-tax states. They go to states where the government gets out of your face. So we can't point to blue states and blue cities as examples of success. Look at Scandinavia. Scandinavia. No. Let's look in the United States. Venezuela, the other day. He was defending Maduro. He was asked by Jose Ramos of Univision, do you think, you know, that Maduro should be pushed out? Do you think that the opposition leader is the real president? He said, no, he's not. What we need there is fair elections. The international community needs to get it. No. What we need is to get rid of a genocidal dictator. That's like saying in Nazi Germany, you know, what we need is fair elections. Not fair elections. You're not going to have fair elections. You got people starving. He's murdering people. He's imprisoning his opposition. He's torturing people. What do you mean fair elections? I think we're a little beyond fair elections. He needs to be removed, but Bernie's never going to say that. Why? You're about to find out. Go.
I think what I learned, one of the things that I think I learned on my trip, you know, as a socialist, the word socialism does not frighten me, and I think it's probably fair to say that the Nicaraguan government is primarily a socialist government.
No, the Nicaraguan government is a Marxist government that was backed by Fidel Castro back then. And Ortega's back. And the people are rising up against him because he's a communist dictator, and they're killing people in the street. Go ahead.
I recall way back in, what was it, 1961, they invaded Cuba. And everybody was totally convinced that Castro...
I love the way he says they invaded Cuba. I think he means we, the United States. What do you mean they invaded Cuba? And John Kennedy screwed it up massively. We had a number of these Cubans who had fled Castro in Cuba, who we enlisted, among others, to invade Cuba. And what did John Kennedy do? He took their air cover away. They were slaughtered on the beach. Go ahead.
Was the worst guy in the world. All the Cuban people were going to rise up in rebellion against Fidel Castro. They forgot that he educated their kids, gave them health care, totally transformed the
Listen
society.
to this. Listen to how this is a client state back then of the Soviet Union. It needed billions of dollars of subsidies from the Soviet Union. And he talks about it as some kind of paradise, some kind of utopia. Well, they took care of the kids. They fed everybody. They went to school. They all had hospital. They had this. No, they didn't. And he had gulags, he had political prisons. Thousands and thousands of people were executed summarily under Che Guevara, who, you know, some of these kids run around with his picture on their T-shirts and so forth. Oh, he's so cool. He was also a racist, by the way. Go ahead.
But just because Ronald Reagan dislikes these people does not mean to say that the people in their own nations feel the same way.
How do you find the sincerity of Sandinista leaders?
I was impressed. I was impressed by Father Descalzo.
He was impressed by the communist leaders. They're good. It really was. I was impressed. Go ahead.
Because he is a very gentle, very loving man. Ortega is an impressive guy.
Ortega
Ernesto,
marches around with his in his army digs with his little cap tilted like he's with the French resistance, and he finds this very impressive. Imagine if Ronald Reagan had been walking around like that with him. What a dictator! Look at him! He's militarized the civilian part of our government. Go ahead.
Cardinal is a funny-looking guy. He's gray hair, and he really does remind you of a hippie.
Did you have suggestions for them how they could organize their PR a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, stop killing people, stop imprisoning people, stop torturing people, stop clamping down on free speech. You know, the stuff that we respect here in the horrible United States of America, that might be a good PR move. Go ahead.
Yes. I mean, the point that I try to make to many of the people that I spoke to is they're getting killed in the American media.
Mm-hmm.
They just cannot compete. Reagan and his people are so sophisticated. They own the airwaves, of course. Reagan, the media, every time.
Oh, yeah, Reagan. He owned the liberal airways, boy, didn't he? He owned the New York Times and the Washington Post and CBS, NBC, ABC. He just owned... The media hated Reagan. They hated him. They tried to undermine him. They pushed the Iran-Contra matter. They hated Reagan. And they certainly didn't want him to win re-election. And he only won what? As I seem to recall, 49 states. And I seem to recall he would have won the 50th state, Minnesota, where his opponent, Mondale, came from. If 1,500 votes had gone the other way, he would have won all 50 states. But Reagan, he doesn't go, you know, Reagan. Go ahead.
Them a photo opportunity, thousands. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for telling us another lie. You know, the media, of course, is not allowed.
So far, he's defended the communist regime in Cuba, Castro, a butcher. He's defended the communist regime in Nicaragua at the time, Ortega, another butcher. Just hear this out. He's not talking about Scandinavia. He's talking about Cuba and Nicaragua. Go.
Sharp questions of the president. That's not allowed. And, you know, my point to Ortega is they are not getting their message of what they are trying to do out to the American
This
people.
is why this man won't come to this studio and debate me. He will not come here. Haven't we asked him multiple times? I want him to come here. I want to talk about his ideology. I want to talk about history. I want to talk about reality. I want to do all these things. He will not talk to me on radio. He will not talk to me on Levin TV. He will not talk to me on my Fox show. He won't do it. Go ahead.
There's just no question about that. And they just don't have that kind of sophistication to understand how to manipulate the media. As you know, the White House has dozens of people who are trained. They are trained and well
See,
paid.
it's just a matter of manipulating the media, by the way, that loves Reagan. And of course, the media didn't love Ortega and Castro. Are you kidding me? The media slobbered all over these guys. Slobbered all over them. They romanticized them. Go ahead.
People who are professional manipulators of the media that have their contacts in CBS and NBC.
All right, that's enough. This is the bumbling idiot. And he's, what, 77 now, and he's running for president again? It's scary because he has his proteges running, too.
I think it's also fair to point out that when we were in Moscow, for example, I think most of the people here also were extremely impressed by their public transportation system. The stations themselves were absolutely beautiful, including many works of art, chandeliers that were beautiful. It was a very, very effective system.
But it's a great, great place. With the chandeliers, the works of art, the subway system. He would have been thrilled with the Third Reich, man. I understand they had artwork all over the place and their public transportation system. You know, and the irony that's lost on this buffoon is one of the things Mussolini said, or what was said about Mussolini, who was also a genocidal fascist dictator, was that he got the trains to run on time. Well, they got the subways to run on time. Go ahead.
I was impressed by the youth programs that they have. Their palaces of culture for the young people, a whole variety of of programs for young people, and cultural programs which go far beyond what we do in this country.
So you need to understand who this man is. He grew up in New York City. There were little areas of New York City that were hard left, and in some cases communists came out of it. Communists were bred, if you will, in these communities, in these colleges, in the newspapers that they read, and so forth and so on. And he's one of them. And he's one of these old Reds. And he's out there talking about free health care, free college. He's joined in on a universal minimum income. Now they're talking about, not him in particular, reparations. They're also talking about, this new Green Deal, which would basically nationalize the economy. I mean, they're all out of the closet. They're all pushing what is a Marxist or soft Marxist agenda. And these are the people that he has spawned, the Democrat Party. So now we have a significant percentage of a major party in this country that absolutely rejects Americanism. They reject the Declaration, the Constitution, they reject capitalism, they reject liberty, individualism. Does he ever talk about individual liberty? Never. Does he ever talk about individual responsibility and accountability? Never. Does he ever talk about the magnificent things this country has done? Never. Does he ever talk about the magnificent thing this country has created? Never. Go.
We went to a theater in Yaroslavl, which was absolutely beautiful, had 3 separate stages. Their cultural programs are put on by professional actors and actresses, including a puppeteer area.
Did you go to Siberia? Did you see who's in Siberia? Did you go to any of their prison camps? Did you go to any of their gulags? Would you have talked to Solzhenitsyn? Would you have talked to him or any of the other refuseniks? What did you do about Soviet Jewry when you were over in the Soviet Union? Did you raise your voice? Were you concerned? Or evangelical Christians who were trying to practice their religion? Did you raise your voice for them? What about censorship in the Soviet Union? Did you talk about that? What about their massive nuclear missiles aimed all over the world that we had to counter? Did you talk about that? Did you talk about Soviet expansionism and adventurism in Africa and other parts of the third world where people were being murdered because they were funding and arming their satellite countries? Did he talk about any of that? Of course he didn't talk about any of that, nor would he. Go ahead.
Plus, the highest price.
That's enough. I can't take this. This sort of junior Menshevik here.